Okay, seventh grade, I'm having some technical difficulties this morning, but hopefully I've got it all figured out. So I'm going to go through your science packet with you and go through some of the questions and help you out with some of these questions. But the first thing I want you to do, if you don't have a pencil in your hand, is go grab a pencil right quick, because I'm going to want you to jot a few things down on the bottom portion of the front side of your paper before we get started. So if you need to, pause the video, grab you something to write with. If not, I'm going to get started, and when I do, I'm going to try to show you my paper. So when I do that, I'm obviously going to have to move the camera, and you're probably going to see my weird little setup right here. So I am standing at the bar between my kitchen and my den, and so obviously the camera's facing back toward me, so you're seeing what's behind me. So when I change the view to show you my paper, you're going to see what's in front of me. So my kitchen's actually in front of me, but I'm standing at the bar and I have this setup going on. So I've had to set my cell phone like right up here so that it can record me while I'm doing these videos, and I have lights behind me. My lamps from my bedroom, because it casts all kind of crazy shadows on my face because my house is dark. So I got my laptop going right here beside me. So if everybody is ready, I'm going to show you my paper. So at the bottom of your paper, I want you to write a few things down to help you with number 1 and number 2. So the number 1 on the back side of this page asks you about traits that are affected by temperature. So remember that animals will sometimes shed their coats when it warms up in the springtime. So they'll go put on a winter coat that's really heavy in the winter, and they'll shed it off when it starts to be springtime. Also remember in the Arctic that some animals actually can change their coat color. So when they grow their winter coat, it will be white so that it's camouflaged with the snow. And then in the springtime, when the snow melts, when they shed that white fur, there will be darker fur underneath to help them camouflage in. We didn't talk very much about traits that help things survive if you're a plant, but plants with smaller leaves, the smaller the leaf, the less heat it will absorb, so that's going to help plants that live in more dry, arid temperatures. All right, then number 2. Number 2 asks you for, give an example of a trait that is affected by the type of soil. So then we're going to be talking about plants. And in this bottom paragraph right here, it's actually talking about some hydrangeas. So it says a hydrangea plant produces blue flowers when it's growing in acidic soils, but the same plant will make pink flowers if the soil is acidic. So this is your answer to number 2. So to number 2, the same plant, a hydrangea, which is a big kind of a poofy flower, if the soil is acidic, it's going to produce blue flowers, and if the soil is basic or has a high pH, it is going to produce pink flowers. All right, I'm going to turn the page and go to number 3. Number 3 asks you what an adaptation is. So if you'll look at paragraph 5 will tell you what an adaptation is, which you should already know. Number 4, give an example of an adaptation. So those are listed in the reading as well around paragraph 5. Or remember that an adaptation is anything that helps an animal survive in its environment. So it could be a duck having webbed feet, or it could be the shape of the beak when we talked about all of those birds when we were studying Darwin. All right, number 5, in a forest ecosystem, 2 animals that might compete for food. You should be good with that. Number 6, what happens to organisms that cannot adapt when their ecosystems change? So number 1 is their survival rate is going to decrease, which means their population is going to decrease. Some of them are going to die, or they may migrate somewhere else. So if an animal can migrate somewhere else, it's going to do that before it just lays down and die. They're way smarter than we give them credit for. All right. Number 7 should be good. Number 8, 2 examples of decomposers. The answer to that is in the end of the second paragraph. Now, Number 9 is giving you several examples of the things that are on that chart from the front page. So I want you to go back to your chart on the front page for number 9. All right, so your chart talks about the relationships between organisms. So mutualism is when both organisms benefit, like when a moth is pollinating the flower, and then the plant actually provides protection for the moth. So both things are benefiting from it. The second one here is neutralism. When we were doing this in our Measure Up book, we didn't call it neutralism. We called it commensalism. So it's the same thing that we talked about in our Measure Up book with a different name. So in this one organism is helped and the other one has no effect. So it's like the small fish that follow the shark around. So it's basically eating food that the shark leaves behind, but the shark isn't harmed or helped. It could really care less. All right, then parasite. We talked about parasites quite a bit. So a parasite-host relationship is going to be like mistletoe growing on the bark of a tree and taking away the tree's nutrients. So a parasite can only live if it's getting its energy from something else. So if it's getting energy from whatever it's attaching itself to, that means it's taking nutrients away from that other organism. So it's good for the parasite, bad for the host. All right, I'm going to skip pages again. So number 10 says to give an example of plants that might compete for water and food in a field. So think about things that would grow in a field or things that would grow in a pasture. And then the last one on that page, check each of these, the ways that humans could affect the ecosystem. So you are going to put a check mark beside these things that humans have control of. So I'm going to read them to you. Earthquakes, insecticides. Insecticides are basically poisons that we spray down to kill insects. Cutting forest, hurricanes, building roads, or damming streams. So you're going to put a check mark by all of the ones that humans have control over. All right, I am going to stop right here before I go to the next page because the next video is going to be a little more lengthy.